Here's a quick little video on types of motion used in voice leading and counterpoint. Voice leading, or part writing, is the practice of assigning musical lines to specific parts. For instance, you might, if you're writing for chorus, you'd be part writing for soprano, alto, tenor, or bass. Or if you're writing for a string quartet, violin 1, violin 2, viola, and cello. You want to be doing this so that both the lines and the harmonies created are idiomatic. Music of the common practice era displays melodic lines that balance inter and independence. So the lines are interdependent and independent. This means that sometimes a line seems like it acts independently, apart from the other lines, even though it relies on the other lines to imply harmony and create tension and release and the other things in music that we really enjoy. This action is the basis for counterpoint. So here are some 4 basic types of contrapuntal motion that we'll be using in common practice era music. Similar motion occurs when voices are moving in the same direction, but not necessarily preserving the same interval between them. So if I went up and we started moving and we had both lines were moving upwards and we had, let's say, a third, a fourth, a fifth, a sixth, and then a seventh, and then an octave. That's not necessarily a line that you'd hear in, say, Bach's fugues, but it's kind of cool. Perhaps something more along the lines of Barber or Copland. But those voices are moving in the same direction. And so that you'd get this. They're both moving upwards, but their intervals are different. Now, you can go back and forth. You can certainly have some be the same interval, but I'm just saying that similar motion is moving in the same direction and not keeping the same interval. If you keep the same interval number, this is known as parallel motion. This is a specific kind of similar motion. This occurs when 2 voices move in the same direction and preserve the same interval number. It doesn't have to be the same quality. It doesn't have to be all major intervals or all minor intervals. It just has to be the same number. So you could have parallel thirds. Those are quite common. And that's just a mix of major and minor thirds, but they're moving in parallel motion. It's the same interval number. You can have it going up to. That would be fine. Parallel sixths, also very common. That's parallel motion. Now, we run into, well, as we'll see, we'll run into some issues with certain intervals that move in parallel motion, but we'll hold off on that for now. Contrary motion is voices that move in opposite directions from each other. Doesn't matter what the interval is. If they're moving apart from each other, it's contrary motion. And then there's oblique motion. This occurs when one voice holds a pitch while another voice moves around it. So you heard in my left hand, there was this big pedal point, and the right hand just played some chords. That's oblique motion. Now, I always used to think when I was first learning about counterpoint that all counterpoint had to be contrary motion. And if it were, it would get boring real fast. Really interesting counterpoint is a mix of all of these, a mix of similar, parallel, contrary, and oblique motion.